Let's go to the next contradiction. This is about concept of centrality. Whether it is Newton's theorem or Einstein's, when you have a concept like this, larger the mass, stronger the influence, farther the mass, weaker is the influence, you would end up having a system wherein there is a central mass and smaller masses which are moving around it, which would say that the central mass is the reason for existence of the whole system. You take out this central mass and the whole system would collapse or cease to exist. And what we are trying to prove here is that central system, even if it is the reason why the system exists in the first place, if you remove it, it does not completely disappear. There is an effect, but it is not the way we think it is. So we are going to study all about the way mass is distributed in the solar system and the Milky Way, because they are the nearest system to us. When you consider solar system, Sun accounts for 99.9% of the mass of the whole solar system, which means you take all these planets, clump them into a small mass. If that is one, if that represents 1 unit of mass, Sun represents 1,000 units, which is okay. Bigger mass, smaller planets going around, as we understand galaxy. Let us come to Milky Way. The supermassive black hole at the center weighs as much as 4 million suns. That's quite a bit of massive mass that we have. And all stars in Milky Way, if we are under the impression that they would be lesser than this, we are in for a surprise. That is why you see that, I have marked it as small. When you see the mass, that's around 400 billion stars. Even if you consider one star as one sun, it may not be so. For the sake of argument, the ratio is 1:100,000. So what was 1,000:1 is exactly reversed as 1:100,000. To give you a perspective about it, let us assume all these planets represent an ant which weighs 5 grams. You have a sun which is weighing as much as 5 kg, like the mass of a cat. When you come to Milky Way, this ant, obviously they are not the same, but it is only representational to compare. If supermassive black hole is represented by an ant, all the masses put together, cumulative masses of the stars, would be something like a horse. And this horse is not just away, this distance away. This is 25,000 light years away from this small ant. What we are trying to say is, this is just a mid-sized galaxy. There are galaxies which are bigger, and possibly this ratio is much, much bigger. Possibly this is an elephant or a dinosaur which is strutting around, and we are saying that supermassive black hole is the reason why it is happening. Ultimately, idea is, if at all you remove this ant out of the system, not much of a difference is made to the horse which is strutting around at 25,000 light years away. That's okay with the Milky Way. But now try and see the solar system. You could get away with the supermassive black hole, but can you get away with a massive sun? What would happen to all the planets? So let us consider the sun and the solar system. And generally, this is how we pursue as the solar system works, which is basically the hand representing the one which is controlling, which is the sun in this case, and all these planets are being controlled through a gravity. And when you look from the top, this is what the view is. So you remove the sun. Generally it is said that when you remove the massive mass, you are removing the gravity or the influence also. When there is no gravity or influence, all these planets would escape the solar system in a direction tangential to their orbits. But is that how it happens? Let us cheat the system a bit. Let us not reduce the sun or vanish the sun completely in a go. Let us do that gradually. So imagine you have a sun which is 100%, bring it down to 99. The gravity is reduced, the influence is reduced because it is directly proportional to the mass. The planets move a bit away. Bring it down a bit more, the planets will move a bit more. The orbital diameter of these planets will keep increasing. You bring it to such an extent that it is just a 1 kg of mass. The solar system, the planets would be far, far away, but still they are going in a circle. When an ant can move a horse at 25,000 light years away, sure 1 kg of sun can move all these planets. This is one possibility. Another possibility is that Jupiter becomes the new sun when you are reducing the size of the massive mass which is sun. When sun's mass becomes lesser than the Jupiter's mass, Jupiter assumes the role of sun and all these planets move around. But you should understand that Jupiter does not have the same influence like that of the sun. Sun is 1,000 times as big as all these planets put together. So there is a possibility if they were near together, maybe the Jupiter could have influenced and got all these planets moving around. But there is a possibility that all these planets are on the other side of the sun, and Jupiter's influence as it is, it's very, very minimal in such a condition. So the solar system may lose all its planets. This is the way Newton's theorem says so. So what we see in the end, that in this system, the central mass is not so central as we understand from the ground. Let's see how Einstein theorem applies. Before we go to applying Einstein's theorem to solar system, let us understand a bit about the gradient. Now you have this massive mass which is bending the space-time fabric and making this planet move around. What happens when you reduce this mass of this massive mass? When you reduce it, its influence is also reduced, and hence this gradient which was steeper here, the gradient is shown as gentler. When the influence weakens, the mass also moves away. So we could say that larger the mass, steeper the gradient, stronger the influence. Farther the mass, gentler the gradient, weaker the influence. Now consider this situation and the third situation. Let us switch these planets or masses, their places. The green mass or the smaller mass becomes as massive as the earlier massive one. The first massive mass becomes smaller. You will see now that this massive mass bends the space more than what this massive mass is bending. Now the situation is flipped. That means now this becomes the massive mass and this one goes around it. Now let us apply the same thing to the solar system. Obviously, as you know, each planet, thanks to its own size and distance from sun, creates a gradient of its own. And that is what is shown here. Now obviously, when you are trying to reduce the mass of the sun, the gradients are also becoming gentler in nature. The planets of course are moving away. But one good thing about the Einstein's theorem is when this sun's mass becomes smaller than Jupiter, in the fabric, imagine Jupiter is making a bigger dent, all the masses come around it, possibly. And it could be the same situation wherein Jupiter may not be able to influence all planets the way Sun does, because Sun is 1,000 times all these planets put together. But let us make life a bit miserable for this. This is okay when you have masses of different sizes. Agreed, in a real-time world, you will never have masses which are of equal size. Let us, for the sake of argument, make them all equal. you may say that, farther the mass, the gentler the speed, we could, gentler the gradient, we could always put them in one orbit or just have one mass. A solar system where there is only one planet, one massive mass. Now try and reduce the sun's mass. When it is reduced to the extent of the planet's mass, what would happen? The gradients would disappear completely. Gradient disappears, influence disappears. There is no way gradient or the space is going to guide the smaller planets because they are no more smaller planets. So the whole solar system, they would just roll away on the fabric of space. So what we are trying to say is that the central mass is not so central either in the Milky Way or in the solar system.
The suggestion that larger the mass, stronger the influence, farther the mass, weaker the influence would invariably give you a system where the larger mass is in the center and all the planets or smaller masses are orbiting around it. And central mass is the reason for the creation of the system because of this suggestion and existence of the system itself. So the general idea is if at all you remove the central mass, it would have a debilitating effect on the system itself. So let us see how this works out with respect to spacity and the classical model of universe. Let us take black hole and Milky Way. So idea was whether you can remove the center supermassive black hole in the Milky Way. As we had seen in the play of forces of S1, S2, S3, S2 has a very minimal effect on the secondary mass, and hence when you remove this ant, the horse would still be strutting around because when you remove the black hole, S2 may disappear, but S3 is still working and it is the principal force, and that is the one which will keep all the stars going around in the Milky Way. Now let us take the sun and the solar system. So when we made the sun vanish, the classical model of universe suggestions ranged from either the whole system ceasing to exist because all the planets will be lost because gravity holds them, or that Jupiter will be the new sun, but it would not have the same influence as its predecessor, which is sun, and some planets or many planets would be lost from the solar system depending on the relative position of the planets. And another issue with the classical model of universe was that centrality also needs unequal masses. In the sense, you cannot have a system wherein all the planets are of the same masses. If at all they are there, the space gradient will not be able to communicate to different masses and they would just roll off on the fabric of space. So let us see how spacity handles this situation. Sun vanishes, S2 vanishes, but S3 is still there. But since S2 is the principal force, obviously the planets, though they are orbiting in their respective orbits because of S3, they would be orbiting at large diameters. And now the Jupiter will also be the new sun, but it has a better chance of retaining the planets because it can bide its time, wait for all those planets to come near it and then catch them in their influence by playing out S2. So there is a chance that the solar system may still exist with the Jupiter as the new center and majority of the planets being in the system. And solar system would survive even if these masses are of equal weight, because S3 does not differentiate whether it is the masses are equal or not. It would still, the mandate of spacity is to keep the system in position, and hence all these planets would still be going around in orbits, albeit larger orbits.